Alright, gamers, you're listening to another episode of What You Gaming On, where we start each episode by asking you, the listener, the viewer, what you're gaming on. If you want to let us know what you're gaming on, make sure to email me at whatyougamingon@gmail.com and tell me the game that you've been playing and what you like about it, what you don't like about it, whatever your thoughts are about the game you are playing, and I will feature your answers in an upcoming video for What You Gaming On. We don't have any entries for this week, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit what I've been gaming on. I have been playing God of War, and this is one of the three games I've really been looking for this year. The games I've been looking for were Sea of Thieves, God of War, and then Spider-Man coming out in September, but God of War is one of the ones I've been looking for. I've loved the God of War series. I love the first three God of War games. Like, I even went back after playing God of War, the new God of War, and played God of War 3 again. And I love the series, not just for the action, but for the characters, and especially for the mythology. Like, I loved playing through the original trilogy and seeing the different aspects of Greek mythology. You know, hearing about gods that I don't know about, hearing about the Titans, which I didn't know a whole lot about, aside from just the Titans were in the Disney Hercules movie, weren't they? I didn't know a lot of, I didn't know as much Greek mythology as is displayed in the God of War trilogy. And then now I love that God of War is moving to Norse mythology, which I've always thought was a really cool lore. I thought that, like, Norse mythology also always had some really cool lore. I love the kind of, like, warrior gods of it, that, you know, Thor and Odin and, you know, all these different gods who are essentially just warrior gods. But I admit most of the Norse mythology I know about, or I knew about, was from Marvel's Thor. Like, that was the pretty much high point of Norse mythology that I knew about, aside from, you know, some small short stories that I've read, or Wikipedia articles that I've read in the past that I honestly don't even remember. So yeah, the bulk of my Norse mythology knowledge came from Marvel's Thor. So it was just such a new experience to meet this different kind of culture, this different kind of mythology. And a lot of people were actually disappointed in this game because they didn't get to go up against, I mean, spoiler alert, you don't fight any of the big major gods in this game. This is very, like, your initial introduction to Norse mythology, and you actually only run up against some minor, less known Norse mythology gods. Two of them I'd never heard of. One I only heard of from the name, which I don't even think it's the same name of the video game Baldur's Gate. But you meet Baldur, one of Odin's sons, Baldur. He's like the big bad that you kind of go up against in this new God of War, but I loved experiencing that Norse mythology. I also loved the character of Kratos in this game. Like, the first three games, Kratos was just this warmongering, bent on revenge character, whereas in this one, he's a lot more tempered. Like, I mean, you know, talking about it, like God of War 3, the first God of War game, you could probably call Kratos an anti-hero. He was definitely not a heroic hero, but he was still saving the world. He was still doing heroic things, even if his own motivations were just revenge against Ares. And then in God of War 2, you could go so far as to call him one of the villains. He definitely was not a good person, and he wasn't doing good things in God of War 2 or God of War 3. But in God of War, this new God of War, he definitely reclaims that title of anti-hero. He's much older, he's much wiser, he's a much more tempered character. He's not quick to enrage, unless for incredibly certain situations where, you know, his family is being threatened, and he immediately rages and kills what he needs to kill. But he's definitely passing on the lessons that he's learned from being who he was in the first God of War trilogy, and that was just a warmongering, hell-bent on revenge character. And he's trying to teach his son Atreus that that's not the way to be. That's definitely not the way to be a god, as Kratos is a god, and in turn Atreus is a god. So a lot of the story revolves around that. That's the crux of the story. Basically, Kratos and Atreus on this journey to spread Atreus' mother's ashes from the highest mountaintop in all the realms of Norse mythology, and that's the crux of the story. And of course, just like any good God of War story, any good fantasy story, for you to climb the mountain, you have to get the item of blah blah blah, which is located in the land of blah blah blah, and you have to go fight off the war in the land of blah 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 against the blah 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 legion. And obviously there's complication after complication after complication in this game of trying to just climb a goddamn mountain. So it's very Lord of the Rings in that essence, is that it's about people walking. But it is a great story, and the combat in the game, it's a lot different. It's actually one of my bigger critiques of it, and it's not even a big critique, because as much as it's different from the God of War trilogy, and it also isn't. It is still very much a God of War game. You're still Kratos. You're still fighting mythological creatures. You're still meeting mythological characters. You're still ripping apart chests to get red, green, and blue different energy powers. Like, it is still very much a God of War game. But one of the things that is very different is the over-the-shoulder camera perspective, where the original God of War was more of like, you saw Kratos running through different areas, and you saw like there was a set camera following him from that area. It wasn't close to Kratos. It was a very like open, vast kind of perspective, whereas this is a very close perspective where you're right over Kratos' shoulder. And because of that, the combat can be a little tricky because you don't see the entire battlefield around you. You just see what's in front of you, and if you need to turn around, it's a little difficult if you're just using the toggle stick to turn around. But they also do add a part of the game where you just push a button, you immediately turn around, which kind of fixes it. So like, the one critique I have of it is fixed, and it's just because I don't want to have to deal with that. I just want the game to be easy. But like, that's my one critique, and it's not even a critique. It's just something that was a little annoying because I would forget to use the turnaround button. But aside from that, it's a very smooth ride for the story. And the studio that did God of War have just from the beginning been talking about, there's no cutscenes. There's no, like, there's no scene that cuts from one perspective to another. Like, it's one long shot. And they are absolutely right. I like the few times that it does cut is if you pause or if you die. And then there's times where you might walk through a portal where the screen goes bright white for a second, but you're still where you are and you're still moving. Like, that is the only kind of cut I can find in this game. So because of that, it really does make a smooth ride through the story, and it's such an enjoyable story, and the combat is great. And the Leviathan axe, it replaces the Blades of Chaos or the Blades of Exile that Kratos usually has in the original trilogy. But it is such a cool weapon. It's this like big axe that, a lot of people are comparing it to Thor's Mjolnir, and they're exactly right. That's exactly what it is. It is such a cool weapon, and you throw it and you push a button and you can like hit enemies as it's coming back to you, and then you grab it and you keep going in the fight. It's just such a super cool weapon that they've switched from the blades to this axe, and I love it. And actually, like, the quality of this game reaffirms the reason that I've held on to my PlayStation 4, and it's for PlayStation 4 exclusives, because all of the PlayStation 4 exclusives that I've played have been phenomenal. God of War, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, Infamous Second Son. All of these games are such just amazing games. Uncharted, the Uncharted series. How could I forget the Uncharted series? All of these games are such amazing games that this is the reason I've held on to my PS4, because ultimately the majority of the games that I play, I just play them on my Xbox One. So keeping my PS4 has been a decision that I've made for exclusive games, and God of War reaffirms that decision. But at the same time, and this kind of, lets me segue into the topic of this video, at the same time, I feel like having games that are exclusive to a console, I don't think that they are good for gaming. I think that ultimately it hurts the gaming culture, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's good for gamers. That there will, of course, be gamers like myself who, is in a fortunate situation that I could get both. That I could get both an Xbox One and a PS4. And I initially got the PS4 because it was announced that they were going to remaster The Last of Us and put it on the PS4, which I'd never had a PS3, so I was excited. So I got the PS4 so that I could play The Last of Us, and it was a good decision. But I did go on to get an Xbox One sometime later. But there aren't going to be a lot of other gamers that are going to do that. Like, there aren't going to be other games, and therefore these gamers are going to not only miss out on these incredible exclusive games, but by making console exclusive games, it then kind of alienates half of the gaming population, because, you know, when you break it down, the gaming population is really split into three groups. There are Xbox players, there are PlayStation players, and then there are both. So if you have an exclusive game for the PS4 or an exclusive game for the Xbox One, then you're alienating at least a third of the gaming population. And I don't think that's a good thing. At the same time, for those who are going to buy a console strictly to buy a exclusive game, that's money in the pockets for the console companies. That's money in the pocket for Sony and Microsoft, but it definitely doesn't help other gamers. It doesn't help gamers, experiences these great stories if they can't get an Xbox One or they can't get a PS4, because there are some exclusives that also go to PC, which you could kind of have PC be like the middle ground of the console wars. That's kind of where everyone gathers together, where, even if you have an Xbox One, you probably play PC games as well. I feel like exclusive games hurt gamers, and they only help profits for companies. But even then, it's kind of a gamble if players are going to buy a $300 console for a $60 game, or if they're just not going to play it, because it's buying a console is not a cheap thing. It's not a cheap thing. And I feel like having these exclusive games definitely hurts gamers. And while sometimes players will buy a console and give that companies a lot of money for a console to buy a game, just as many gamers aren't. There are just as many gamers who aren't going to buy a console on its own just to play one game and whatever future exclusive games come out, like me. Like, there aren't a lot of gamers who are going to be like me and have both, and have one specifically for exclusives. And that can't help those companies. That can't help Sony. That can't help Microsoft. So I really feel like because at this point the consoles aren't even that different. Like, honestly, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 really aren't that different. The biggest difference between Xbox One and PS4 is the exclusive that it has and the controller. That's really just where the differences between consoles really breaks down. And I think that's just it. Like, we've gotten to the point that's enough. The console wars are over. Stop making console exclusive games. Make games open for all systems, or at least for the two big systems, the Xbox One and the PlayStation, or just make it at least for the PC. So I don't think exclusive games are a good thing for gaming culture. I don't think they help gamers. I don't think they help companies as much as you'd think, since there are going to be as many gamers who don't buy a console as many gamers who will. So I really just the biggest advantage is money. It all breaks down to money, and that some gamers aren't going to have it to buy a console, and that some companies aren't going to make that money when a game comes out and players don't buy the console for that game. So I really think exclusive games are a hindrance to gaming culture, or to gamers, or to gaming companies. And to keep doing it, I think it hurts more than it helps. But what do you think about exclusive gamings, and what do you think about God of War? If you've played it, let me know all that you think in the comments, and follow me on all the internets. If you like this video, or you like listening to this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it around so others can join the conversation. If you want to check out any of my written reviews, or any of my Marvel written reviews of TV shows or movies, go to www.treyguillotine.com and subscribe to my channel to geek out some more. So have fun and keep